The velvet rope had been lifted by her careful hands for 25 years, but in her dreams, Dolores D. Washington was always calling action instead of please take your seats. D, 64, sat in the second row of the Tonight Show studio, her cinephile's eye automatically analyzing the camera angles, lighting setup, and production quality, while her weathered hands moved in unconscious directing gestures on her lap. The small Regal Cinemas 25 years excellence pin on her burgundy vest caught the studio lights as she leaned forward with the focused attention of someone who had spent decades studying every aspect of filmmaking, from the back of movie theaters to the thousands of moviegoers who had been guided to their seats by Dee over 2.5 decades. She was just another friendly usher who somehow always knew which films were worth watching and could explain complex plot points in ways that made perfect sense. What they didn't know was that they were being served by a woman who had written screenplays that could have won Academy Award. What Dee didn't know was that her story had been quietly circulating among film school professors and independent filmmakers after someone had discovered that several spec scripts floating around Hollywood agencies in the 1,990s scripts that had been praised as brilliant but uncommercial were written by Dee Washington, the same person who now worked at the Regal Multiplex in Queen. A film studies professor at NYU had been using one of Dee's unproduced scripts in his screenwriting class as an example of perfect character development and dialogue. Dee's story had begun in the golden age of independent cinema, when young filmmakers believed they could change the world through the power of storytelling. Born in Detroit to parents who worked at the Ford plant, Dee had shown an early fascination with movies, spending her childhood allowance on matinee tickets and studying how different directors created emotion through camera movement, lighting, and performance. Her high school English teacher had recognized her talent for visual storytelling and encouraged her to apply to film school. After graduating from USC's film program in 1979, Dee had moved to New York with dreams of becoming the next Spike Lee or Martin Scorsese. She'd worked as a production assistant on independent films, learning every aspect of movie making, from script development to post-production. Her senior thesis film, Neighborhood Stories, had won several student film festivals and caught the attention of producers who encouraged her to write feature-length screenplays. Dee Over 10 years, Dee had written 17 screenplays that explored themes of urban life, family relationships, and social justice with the kind of authenticity that came from lived experience. Her scripts featured complex African-American characters navigating real-world challenges, stories that were both deeply personal and universally relatable. Several major agencies had represented her work, and a few scripts had come tantalizingly close to production before being rejected as too niche or not commercially viable by studios that preferred formulaic blockbusters. But Hollywood, in the 1990s, had proven resistant to stories by and about people who didn't fit the industry's narrow definition of mainstream appeal. Despite critical praise for her writing, Dee had struggled to get her films produced in an industry that claimed to value diversity but rarely invested in authentic stories from underrepresented voices. After years of near misses and development deals that led nowhere, she'd found herself unable to pay rent in Los Angeles on the occasional freelance income that came from option payments and script doctor work. The movie theater job had been temporary work while Dee figured out how to continue pursuing her filmmaking dreams without starving, but 25 years later, she discovered unexpected satisfaction in sharing her love of cinema with audiences who appreciated her recommendations and insights. She'd continued writing screenplays in her spare time, but without industry connections or representation, her work had remained hidden in filing cabinets and computer folders. The Tonight Show tickets had been a surprise retirement gift from the theater's management team. Dee was stepping down next month after 25 years of exceptional customer service, and her colleagues wanted to honor the woman who had made every film screening feel like a special event through her obvious passion for movies and storytelling. It was a Monday night taping in November, and Jimmy was in good spirits after interviewing a blockbuster director about his latest superhero film. During his commercial break interaction with the audience, his attention was drawn to Dee by the way she was analyzing the studio's production setup with obvious technical knowledge and the professional manner in which she observed the interview techniques being used. Ma'am, you look like someone who really understands how television production works. Are you in the entertainment business? Each straightened with the practiced professionalism of someone who had spent decades in customer service while harboring creative ambitions. Movie theater usher, Sir, Regal Cinemas in Queens, been there 25 years, retiring next month. A warm murmur went through the nearby audience members. Movie theater ushers were the unsung heroes who helped create magical movie-going experiences, and 25 years of service deserved recognition. 25 years as a movie theater usher, you must have seen every movie that's come out in the past quarter century. Dee's face lit up with genuine enthusiasm for cinema. Oh, yes. And it's been amazing to watch how filmmaking has evolved. Digital technology, special effects, storytelling techniques. I've had a front row seat to the history of modern movies. It sounds like you really understand movies beyond just watching them. You talk about filmmaking like someone with technical knowledge. Well, I studied film in college, actually, USC Film School, class of 1979. I wanted to be a director, maybe a screenwriter, but that was before real life happened. Jimmy's curiosity was immediately piqued. USC Film School was one of the most prestigious programs in the world, producing many of Hollywood's most successful directors and writers. USC Film School? That's serious filmmaking education. What kind of films did you want to make? Dee paused, as if deciding how much of her dreams to share. Stories about real people, real communities, films that showed the complexity of urban life, family relationships, the challenges and triumphs of working class families, movies that entertained but also had something important to say. The sophistication of Dee's artistic vision was immediately apparent to everyone listening. This wasn't casual movie appreciation, this was serious cinematic ambition. Jimmy made a decision that would change everything. The USC Film School and 25 years of movie expertise, that sounds like someone who knows storytelling inside and out. Would you mind coming down here and telling us about your filmmaking background? Dee looked uncertain. Oh, I don't think people want to hear about old Hollywood dreams. That world is very different now. Herschel, trust me, people definitely want to hear about filmmaking dreams. Come on down. As Dee made her way to the stage with the confident stride of someone who had once walked onto film sets and into pitch meetings, her bearing transformed completely. The authoritative presence of someone who had once worked in Hollywood's creative trenches. When she reached the stage, Jimmy guided her to a comfortable chair. Ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy announced, this is Dolores Washington. For 25 years, she's been helping people enjoy movies at Regal Cinemas, but before that, she was pursuing a career as a filmmaker in Hollywood. Dee, tell us about your time in the film industry. Dee settled into the chair, and when she spoke about filmmaking, her voice took on the passion and authority of someone who truly understood the craft of visual storytelling. I graduated from USC in 1979 and moved to New York to work in independent film. I wanted to tell stories that reflected the experiences of people like me, working class African Americans navigating urban life, family dynamics, social challenges, stories that were authentic but also universally relatable. The audience was completely quiet, understanding they were hearing about serious artistic ambitions from someone who clearly understood her craft. What kind of films did you want to make? Dee's eyes lit up with the vision that had never completely faded, character-driven dramas that explored how ordinary people deal with extraordinary circumstances. Not message movies, but stories that happen to feature characters who rarely got complex three-dimensional representation on screen. Films that showed the full humanity of communities that Hollywood often stereotyped or ignored. Did you write screenplays? 17 feature screenplays over 10 years. I had representation at major agencies, came close to getting several films produced. The scripts got good coverage, industry readers liked them, but producers kept saying they were too niche or not commercial enough. Jimmy reached behind his chair and pulled out a tablet loaded with film industry databases. Dee, we did some research before tonight's show. He showed her archived script coverage, reports, and industry documents. According to Hollywood agency records, Dee Washington wrote several screenplays in the 1,990s that received exceptional coverage from script readers. Listen to this review of your script Sunday morning. brilliant character development, authentic dialogue, and emotional depth that rivals the best independent cinema. This writer has extraordinary talent. D looked stunned. You found my old coverage reports? We did, and listen to this from a former development executive at Miramax. D. Washington was one of the most talented screenwriters I encountered during my career. Her scripts had the kind of authentic voice and emotional honesty that great films are built on. Hollywood's failure to produce her work represents a significant loss to American cinema. The studio fell completely silent. The audience was processing that they were meeting someone whose unproduced screenplays were being praised as lost classics by film industry insiders. Why weren't your films produced? Dee's expression grew more reflective, touching on painful industry realities. The film business in the 1990s was very different. Studios wanted formulaic content that fit established categories. My scripts featured complex African American characters and stories that couldn't be easily categorized. Executives said they were too sophisticated for urban audiences, but too specific for mainstream appeal. So I left Hollywood. I ran out of money. Option payments and development deals don't pay rent consistently. And after years of near misses, I needed stable income. I moved back to New York and took the theater job to survive while I figured out what to do next. Jimmy leaned forward. But you never stopped writing, did you? Dee smiled for the first time since taking the stage. You can't stop being a storyteller. I've written 8 more screenplays over the past 20 years, plus treatments for documentary projects. Working in a movie theater actually gave me incredible perspective on how audiences respond to different kinds of stories. Jimmy continued reading from the tablet. D, we found something else. A film professor at NYU has been using your unproduced screenplay, Family Business, in his screenwriting classes as an example of perfect structure and character development. Someone's been teaching my work? Professor Martinez says it's the best unproduced screenplay he's ever read. He's been trying to find you for years to get permission to help develop it for production. Jimmy stood and addressed the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, this woman has spent 25 years working in movie theaters while writing screenplays that film professors consider masterpieces of unproduced cinema. He turned back to Dee. The film community wants to honor you. The Independent Filmmaker Project wants to establish a development fund specifically for your screenplays with modern producers who understand the value of authentic storytelling. Dee's eyes filled with tears. They want to develop my scripts? After all these years? They do. And Dee, there's something else. Several streaming platforms are actively seeking content that features underrepresented voices telling authentic stories. They want to read your work. Jimmy had one more surprise. We have someone here who wanted to meet you. From backstage, Ava DuVernay, the acclaimed director of Selma and 13th, appeared carrying a stack of scripts. Dee, DuVernay said, approaching with obvious respect. I've read 3 of your screenplays, and they represent exactly the kind of sophisticated, authentic storytelling that cinema needs. Your work should have been produced decades ago. Dee was openly crying now, overwhelmed by recognition from one of the most respected filmmakers of the current generation. You've read my scripts? I have, and they're extraordinary. Your dialogue is flawless, your character development is masterful, and your stories explore themes that are both deeply specific and universally resonant. You're exactly the kind of filmmaker the industry should have been supporting all along. Jimmy sat back down beside Dee. Dee, you've spent 25 years thinking your filmmaking career was over, but what you really did was continue perfecting your craft while the industry slowly evolved to appreciate the kind of stories you've always told. As they helped Dee back to her seat, she stopped and looked out at the audience one more time. Thank you, but I want young filmmakers to know, keep writing, keep creating, even when the industry doesn't seem ready for your voice. Stories don't have expiration dates, and sometimes the world needs time to catch up to what you have to say. The episode that aired became one of the most inspiring Tonight Show segments of the year, sparking conversations about diversity in Hollywood and the unrecognized talent working in everyday jobs throughout the entertainment industry. Dee's story inspired several major streaming platforms to actively seek out overlooked writers from previous decades, recognizing that great stories existed outside the traditional development pipeline. 3 of her screenplays were optioned for production within 6 months, and the Dolores Washington Screenwriting Fellowship was established to support underrepresented voices in film. Dee spent her retirement finally seeing her stories reach the screen, discovering that leaving the movie theater didn't mean leaving cinema. It meant finally getting the recognition her talent had always deserved. At 66, Dee still watches movies with a director's eye, still believes that authentic storytelling can change hearts and minds, and still carries her USC Film School ID alongside her theater employee badge, a reminder that real filmmakers never stop creating, regardless of whether the industry is ready to embrace their vision. Sometimes the most important films aren't the ones that make the most money, but the ones that tell the truth about human experience with such honesty and skill that they remind us why movies matter in the first place, one carefully crafted story at a time.